One of China's biggest internet celebrities, Li Chiji, joined a youth group under the Chinese Communist Party. Experts say she could be utilized by the party for propaganda purposes. A river in China's Sichuan province is turning blood red. This is not the first time. Officials warn more floods are on the way for major rivers in both the north and south. At almost all of China's coastal borders, the Chinese Communist Party has confrontations with its neighbors. Is the CCP going to have a war with the U.S. and also eventually with U.S. allies? What would happen if a war did break out? And a top staffer for Nancy Pelosi is a registered foreign agent who lobbied for China's state-run broadcaster CCTV. And a former advisor to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is registered as a foreign agent working for Chinese embassies. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Now let's take a look at one of China's biggest internet celebrities. You may have seen her on YouTube, a Chinese girl who seemingly lives a fairy tale life. In peaceful rural areas, she uses flowers to make blushers, sleeps under a tree, and makes delicious food for herself and her grandma. Her name is Li Ziqi, and she just became a member of a youth group led by the Chinese Communist Party. What sets Li apart from her peers is her influence in the West. Even though both Facebook and YouTube are banned in China, Li has amassed quite some fans on both platforms. Her YouTube channel has over 11 million subscribers. That's more than the BBC and Fox's YouTube channel. On Facebook, she has over 3 million followers. Experts told Voice of America that China is trying to utilize its internet celebrities' influence to create soft power for the country. Put simply, to make people have a good impression of China and ultimately the Chinese Communist Party. And Li could be a good choice for that. Stanley Rosen, a professor of Chinese politics at Southern California, told VOA that he thinks there is no question that the party wants to co-opt these individuals for domestic and international purposes. The latter is clear from the YouTube channel, since YouTube is banned in China. Plans may have been long in the making. In 2014, China's Communist Youth League created a 5-year plan to groom influencers that can be owned and used by the organization. In a 2018 campaign, the Communist Youth League promoted 100 internet celebrities as role models. Li was one of them. The next year, Li became an ambassador of an association under the Youth League. But in China, influencers have to toe the party line or else they could suffer harsh penalties. In 2018, authorities jailed a super popular live streamer for singing the national anthem in a disrespectful way. In the same year, after banning actors with tattoos on television, China's top media regulator said celebrities whose heart and morality are not in line with the party will be banned from television. Chinese state media warns that the country's longest river is now witnessing its 5th round of peak flooding this year. That's as heavy downpours in central and southern China are leaving multiple regions submerged.
An online video shows locals from Jingtang County in China's Sichuan province still able to dine in a restaurant doused in floodwater on Saturday. But a day later, the first and second floor of the downtown area were completely underwater. Officials announced on Monday this year's 5th flood peak in China, which came only 2 days after the 4th one. Chinese media reported that the flood level in the county is the second highest in recorded history. An online video showing the Three Gorges Dam has opened 8 flood discharging outlets to release the water. In the mountainous Wen County of Gansu province, landslides and heavy downpour are leaving houses submerged in water. The filmer of this video says there are people on the rooftops waiting for rescue. A state media report confirmed that some residents are trapped on top of houses, and the flood has not spared the northern region. In Shandong province's Yinan County, heavy rain soaked a cattle farm, drowning over 100 cattle. Some were swept away by floodwater. Officials say water level for several branches of the Yangtze River will continue to increase in the coming days. They warned of more floods in the Yangtze as well as the northern Yellow, Hai, and Songhua rivers. Despite the scale of the damage, state media TV broadcasts are occupied with rescue efforts and other propaganda. The regime has been criticized for censorship in flood reporting. The month-long floods have caused concerns over further economic downturns, threats over whether the Three Gorges Dam can take the pressure from more floods, and fears over the potential spread of the virus caused by the floods. The floods are also partially responsible for China's deepening food crisis, as officials announced grain production has decreased by a third compared with last year. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
A river in China's Deyang City inside Sichuan province has turned blood red since Sunday. Locals say the water also has a strong, unpleasant odor. It's unclear where the tainted water came from, and authorities are now investigating its source. But it's not the first time the water has turned this color. In 2016, pollution from a local glass factory also caused the same river to turn bright red. Now we take a look at unusual weather and the special meaning behind it in Chinese culture. On Sunday and Monday, it snowed at two places in China's southwest province of Qinghai in midsummer. It's a mountainous area and colder than other places, but still, snow in the summertime is very unusual. According to the Chinese lunar calendar, it's still the month of June. This year, it snowed at least 8 times in China in that month alone. But snowfall in June has a special meaning in Chinese culture. It goes back to one of the country's most well-known ancient plays, The Injustice to Dou Yi. According to the play, Dou Yi's husband died 2 years after their marriage. A ruffian wanted to force Dou Yi to marry him, but she refused. In anger, the ruffian accused Dou Yi of murder, and Dou Yi was later wrongly convicted of the crime by corrupt officials. Before her execution, Dou Yi swore that 3 abnormal phenomena would occur to prove her innocence. One of the 3 was that it would snow in June. Her 3 predictions came to pass after she was executed. So in China, when snow falls in June, according to the lunar calendar, some associate it with injustice happening in the country. A top staffer for Nancy Pelosi is a registered foreign agent who lobbied for China's state-run broadcaster CCTV. That's according to the National Pulse. Brendan Daly worked as the former communications director for Pelosi for nearly a decade. According to his LinkedIn, Daly was instrumental in orchestrating Pelosi's rise from House Minority Whip to House Minority Leader and to Speaker. Before serving under Pelosi, a 2001 Foreign Agents Registration Act reveals Daly donated $1,000 to Pelosi's campaign. And a 2012 Foreign Agents Registration Act showed Daly helped CCTV expand into the American market by providing strategic counsel. During that time, Daly served as the executive vice president at Ogilvy Public Relations Worldwide. Under the filing, CCTV America is fully under the Chinese regime's control. Email correspondence between Daly and the head of CCTV America reveals the services Ogilvy would provide. Daly said he was excited to work with CCTV to establish CCTV Americas as the program to watch. CCTV hired Ogilvy for 3 months, paying $15 grand per month for services. That put Daly on the Chinese regime's payroll. Before Pelosi, Daly served under Bill Clinton as part of the U.S. Trade Office representative, where he helped Congress eventually pass the Permanent Normal Trade Relations with China. Daly also served under former President Barack Obama as Director of Public Affairs for the Department of Energy and as spokesperson for Energy Secretary Ernest Moniz. But Pelosi isn't the only one who had an advisor who served as a lobbyist for the Chinese regime. A report by the National Pulse shows Daniel Cohns, a former advisor to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, is registered as a foreign agent working on behalf of the Chinese regime's embassies. A 2018 FARA filing shows Cohns was paid by the regime to lobby for the Communist Party's U.S. embassy. Cohns served as an advisor to Cuomo during his 2002 gubernatorial campaign, which ultimately failed. Cuomo's campaign records show Cohns received thousands of dollars while serving. He also served under Democratic Congressman Mike Honda as his communications director. Likewise, he used his connections to become vice president at BLJ Worldwide, an international strategic communications consultancy. The U.S. continues tightening restrictions on telecoms company Huawei by adding dozens of its affiliates to a U.S. blacklist. The Chinese tech giant has been avoiding U.S. sanctions by using third parties and alternative ways to access American technology.
The Trump administration is imposing more restriction on Huawei's access to U.S. chip technology. It's adding 38 Huawei affiliates from 21 countries to the U.S. trade blacklist, barring U.S. firms from doing businesses with them. That raises the total number of blocked Huawei affiliates to over 150. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said, quote, Huawei has continuously tried to evade U.S. restrictions imposed in May. Now, with the additional sanctions in place, he tweeted, quote, we dealt a direct blow to Huawei and the repressive Chinese Communist Party by further limiting Huawei's ability to acquire U.S. technology. President Trump told Fox News why his administration is expanding sanctions on Huawei.
We don't want their equipment in the United States because they spy on us. Huawei is a disaster.
The press release says the Department of Justice has indicted Huawei for stealing U.S. technology, conspiracy, wire fraud, bank fraud, racketeering, and helping Iran evade sanctions, along with other charges. Huawei's HiSilicon division relies on software from U.S. companies to design its chips. The U.S. will continue to restrict exports to Huawei and is urging U.S. allies and partners to join. Phil Zhou, NTD News, New York.
Beijing has announced military exercises to be held in the Taiwan Strait. For weeks, the Chinese regime has been showing off its weapons on a large scale, especially those that could be used to attack Taiwan. It's considered a major show of force. That's as the U.S. sends forces to this area to assist Taiwan. The island embraces a system of democracy and has been opposing mainland China's authoritarianism for the past 70 years. Now, amid the sensitive situation, a clip published 2 years ago by the Chinese regime's media mouthpiece, CCTV, was recently recovered by Chinese netizens and has since gone viral online. The clip showed a sinking tank after it had been launched into the Yangtze River for a test. It appeared to be a Type 05 amphibious armored vehicle. This kind of vehicle can be used both on land and in water. But in the video, after the vehicle began to accelerate, water flooded into it and it began to sink. People sitting on the vehicle's roof hurriedly jumped off to escape. The tank capsized and sank quickly afterwards. The clip was part of a 2018 CCTV documentary made to document the development of China's military equipment, including its failures. The tank's test run was reportedly carried out in 2002. Now, our China Affairs analyst Jason Ma will show us a unique aircraft. Its official name is Rotorcraft, nicknamed the Aerial Tricycle. But today, the U.S. Rotorcraft isn't the one in the spotlight. Instead, we'll take a look at a piece of advanced equipment made only for China's special forces.
When I first saw the report saying that the CCP Special Forces had been heavily equipped with this aerial tricycle, I thought some netizens were spoofing the CCP. Later, I did some research online and found that it was actually true. And what surprised me even more was that in 2019, during the CCP's military parade, this aerial tricycle, an advanced kind of Special Forces equipment, actually appeared. It was displayed in the military parade to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the founding of China's communist regime. Chinese state-run media claim that it has great military value, saying it has short takeoff and landing distances, can fly at low speeds and low altitudes, is easy to drive, cheap and easy to conceal. However, when I read relevant materials, I could not help but feel that I was reading grotesque novels or black humor. In order for me to read it seriously, I had to remind myself again and again that this should be in fact a world-leading device from the CCP, and this is serious and that I must study carefully. It can carry disposable multi-purpose rocket launchers, one of which was even equipped with missiles. Later, those models were dropped. In this open space like a convertible car, I am really worried that the missile launch will injure the passengers. The CCP initially planned to use this aerial tricycle to launch paratroopers, but the experiment found that with a strong air current, paratroopers were easily injured by the rear propellers. In addition, there are only a few passengers and a low passenger capacity, so they had to give up the idea of using it with paratroopers. An article praising the device suggests that it will show great power when the CCP attacks Taiwan. The logic is very simple. This judgment is made based on distance alone. The article claims that this kind of aerial tricycle can fly up to 370 miles. The Taiwan Strait is only 120 to 200 miles away. The article says it can take off from coastal bases, cross the strait, and open up a kind of through train across the strait. And once it is realized, it will definitely become a classic special operation and go down in history. The development personnel of this device may have all complied that the enemy's weapons and combat effectiveness are about the same level as people in China, whose houses are demolished by authorities. They can only throw stones, burning bottles, and the like. Whenever the opponent has a decent weapon, soldiers riding this aerial tricycle become the opponent's living targets, due to its low speed, especially when it descends. An article said that the improved flight equipment can reach 370 miles due to the Aero Engine Bombardiers Rotax. I checked and found that this is an Austrian company, BRP Rotax. China's military industry is proud of this airplane and showed it off during the military parade, saying it's the world's leading model, but its core components are still from another country.
当然了，中共的媒体报道说，中国的特种兵对他喜欢的不得了。
The CCP's media said that the regime's special forces really like it. I fully believe and understand this. If I have a gun at home and my family allows me to buy it and to shoot the tree in my backyard, I will be very happy to play and enjoy that gun. But one day, if you force me to take this gun to the battlefield and fight against the opponent's machine gun, I will hate this gun and you.
去上战场跟对方的机关枪对阵，我会恨死这把枪。
The Chinese regime is using its new national security law over Hong Kong to bring the city under Beijing's control. Some now wonder whether Taiwan will be next. And if the CCP was to use military force to do it, would the U.S. intervene and stand with the region? NTD's Chinese language side spoke with two China affairs experts to find out.
The CCP has taken a hard stance toward the U.S. over affairs in the South China Sea and Taiwan, but recently they've softened their stance and have appealed to the U.S. for dialogue. According to newspaper The South China Morning Post, Beijing didn't want the situation to escalate and ordered Chinese army to absolutely not open fire first. While on Chinese social media, China's 50 Cent Army and Little Pinks, the country's internet propaganda trolls and sympathizers, have remained unusually quiet for weeks. That's in contrast to their usual attitude, a sense of military supremacism over the U.S. and of fearlessness in the face of war. Former Lieutenant Colonel of the Chinese Army Naval Command, Yao Cheng, said, "It's because the CCP knows its military forces lie far behind that of the U.S."
Now the political, diplomatic, and military cooperation between the United States and Taiwan is very close. The CCP has seen it now and is afraid, because the military strength of China and the United States is not at the same level at all. The United States has a missile defense system, but China does not have this system. If its ships fight the United States at sea, they will be very obvious targets.
NTD's China Affairs analyst Tang Jingyuan pointed out the contract between the U.S.'s hardline and the CCP's increasingly low stance.
In the last 2 years, the CCP was very overbearing in the South China Sea, and the United States avoided confrontation. At that time, the United States was criticized and Trump was criticized. But recently, Pompeo issued a statement on the South China Sea. This is very important. This was the turning point. Since then, the attitude of the U.S. military has changed in the opposite way. The United States shows a very strong presence in the South China Sea. The military exercises and reconnaissance has advanced to places very close to the coastline of South and East China. In the past, the CCP could not tolerate it at all. You can see that the United States has completely changed from passive to active, and the CCP is in turn very low-key in dealing with these things.
Tang said the U.S. seems to be preparing for a fight, so the regime is backing down.
We have seen an interesting phenomenon. Recently, the U.S. military has been close to the coastline of Guangdong province, and even Shanghai, for 12 days in a row. The closest distance is less than 60 miles from the coastline. But the CCP did not react strongly. I think this shows one point. The CCP is very clear about two things. First, the attitude of the Americans has changed. The CCP wanted to blackmail in the past, but now they know that blackmail would be unsuccessful. Second, the CCP knows very well how far it is from the United States in terms of naval and air strength. they dare not enter a real war. Once the United States shows that they are not afraid to fight with the CCP, when the U.S. really has the intention of seeking war, the CCP will know that it has to back down.
Chinese fighter jets have often flown across the unofficial line that divides the Taiwan Strait into Chinese and Taiwanese zones, or flew around the island as a show of force to threaten Taiwan. Taiwan is now in discussions with the U.S. on acquiring underwater sea mines and cruise missiles. The island is receiving U.S. support in areas like politics, arms sales, and economic cooperation. U.S. Health Minister Alex Azar's recent visit to Taiwan was also an important symbol of support.
This move broke the tacit agreement between China and the United States in the past. Since the establishment of diplomatic relations between these two countries, there has been a tacit agreement that the United States will not develop official relations with Taiwan, but only maintain unofficial relations with it. Azar's visit to Taiwan has broken this tacit understanding.
Tang said the stance of international society towards Hong Kong is very important for the island's safety, and that the tense situation inside China is also playing a role.
If the CCP had really gotten hold of Hong Kong without being punished by the international community, then the CCP may feel that they have succeeded once, and they may want to do it a second time. But under the current circumstances, Hong Kong has not yet been settled. At the same time, the CCP is facing conflicts inside China, floods, etc., and various conflicts inside the party, and also multiple sanctions imposed by the United States. The rapid deterioration of Sino-U.S. relations, all this will lead to the result that the CCP must consider the risks. If they were to send troops into Taiwan now, they would very likely risk a direct war with the U.S. They would not be fighting Taiwan, but actually fighting the U.S., even including some U.S. allies.
Yao Cheng offered a reminder to Western countries not to be deceived by the Chinese regime.
Don't be fooled by the current performance of the CCP. They are waiting. They are waiting until the election is over. Therefore, what they are doing in the South China Sea is a protracted war. They believe that the United States will not stay long in that area because it is far away from the U.S. mainland to the South China Sea, and that it will cost too much money and manpower. The CCP always has this point of view. Don't think that the CCP has surrendered. That's not the case. The CCP is very cunning. So I think the United States and other Western countries should not be deceived by the CCP.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.